everybody, it's Tuesday.
And welcome to the second of this week's editions of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And we are here, I guess, twice early this week because, well, honestly, we rearranged the schedule because a whole bunch of us are going to Ice Expos this weekend and next weekend.
Expo season.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony.
Yeah, so we are so excited to be here. It's a Tuesday that feels like a Thursday that feels like, I don't know, almost a Friday. Because there are so many people that are meeting up this weekend and next weekend. And so these next 2 weeks are just going to feel like a big fishing party. This is all accented by the fact that people are kind of starting to get ice depending on where you're at. I'm not saying safe ice, right? Like, don't read too far into what I'm saying here, right? There are people that I've seen on ice in different places. But here I would say we cannot be yet. Why is I'm talking to Josh behind the scenes. Look at me. I'm so green screeny tonight. I'm like so outlining.
I don't know. It just is it's the reflection from the back. You don't let me put any more lights up. It's not my fault.
Oh my goodness. That's okay.
Do I look like a photographer?
Well, I was going to say in a minute, but not yet. We're going to bring our guest in. Not yet. But then we're going to be like this big on everybody's screen. So unless you're watching us like broadcast on your TV, then it would be different. But I just noticed it. But either way, we were talking about people are starting to get ice season. Mm-hmm. Get ice. Well, I mean, that's the thing is it differs everywhere. It differs across even just a single body of water. We went out to one of our local lakes tonight on our way home from work, and it looks actually really crazy. There's a section that must have froze, I guess, before this little round of snow that we got, and it looks like white, icy ice. I don't know what you think of an ice season. But then there was a whole other section that was that really dark, clear ice that had frozen after the snow. And so, it just was really interesting to see how that differs from spot to spot.
Hey, Jay. So, let us know if you guys have been out on ice. Just let us know what you found in your areas. It's just interesting to see it progress up the ice belt. I've seen some people that have been, testing the waters as far south as Appleton. And we have our buddy Ryan finding some good ice up in the Northwest. Tim. Hey, Tim. And like Emily said, we went out, we saw some ice. We didn't have our auger with us at work, unfortunately.
Not a fun bar either.
But no, We'll probably get out and check some ice maybe tomorrow night. Maybe I'll get the auger ready in the morning, or spud bar. And then we'll then we're heading out. Then we're heading out till Sunday to St. Paul.
Yeah. And I guess one vendor that will be there this weekend and next weekend for Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo is somebody that everybody is really excited to see. So let's just bring our guest in. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brian.
Thanks, guys. Excited to be here tonight.
Yeah. So we honestly love chatting fishing with you, and it's hard to not just like dive into the middle of the conversation. So with that being said, I know that there's a bunch of people here tonight who know you or have met you. Oh, Josh and I have two different cups, but the other night we used the hubby and the beast, and so tonight is wifey and beauty. but gosh, you just interrupted my wonderful introduction of Brian. But there's a lot of people here that don't know you. So I guess maybe can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely, guys. So Widowmaker was started in 1985. My wife and I took it over in 2011. So this is our 12th year in the business. Obviously, we've seen a lot of change through those 12 years. Obviously, the tungsten era came on, and it continues to develop into other aspects of fishing. But again, my name's Brian. My wife and Mandy, are the owners of Widowmaker Lures. And like you said, obviously, we're going to be at St. Paul this weekend, and we're super excited about the Wisconsin Ice Expo the weekend after.
Okay, so I love actually where you started. You said that Widowmaker has been around since 1985. Have you owned it that long?
No, we didn't. So Widowmaker was started in 1985 actually by a female, just off the Mississippi River over by real close to Moline, Illinois, real small town called Port Byron, Illinois. So what happened with me is I was just a very, very avid ice fisherman. I was looking for some of my favorite jigs, the Cadis cane. Couldn't find them in my favorite colors. They were always sold out in the purple. So I just called the owner directly, looking for some Cadis canes. I said, "Hey, what's going on? My buddies and I, this is our favorite jig, and we're having a hard time finding. We can't find the purple ones anywhere." He says, "Well, I'm 85. I'm slowing down. I'm looking to get out of it." So instantly, I start kind of prying with questions. He was kind of defensive, standoffish. He said, "Hey, I'll sell you the jigs. I already got a buyer in mind." I said, "Okay, that's fine. Totally understand." Put a big order of Cadis canes in because I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get them again. Super excited about that. Get the jigs. About a month and a half later, I get a phone call back from the owner of the business. I said, "Hey, Carl, what's up?" He says, "Hey, are you still interested in the business?" And I really wasn't interested at all. I was just kind of making small talk on the phone with him, but I kind of start talking with him again and realized he's only a little over an hour away. So I said, "Yeah, let me come take a look." Went and took a look at it and absolutely was like crazy about it. Obviously, I did a lot of like tying of jigs when I was younger, tying of flies, like the lead casting with the do it molds type stuff. Went down, looked at it, was like, "Holy cow, this would be really cool." Obviously, my favorite jig's not going to die. Talked to she was my then fiance, and I said, "Hey, I did something crazy this morning. I went down, looked at a fishing lure company. I think we should buy it." She's like, "You're crazy. I just started my nursing career. You just started your corrections career. You're crazy. We're just about ready to get married." I said, "No, let's take a look." I said, "At least just take a look." So she went down with me that following Saturday. We looked at it, and she was all on board, straight up ready to go. So we did it, and like I said, it's been 12 years now. It's been a wild ride. I've seen a lot of ups and downs, but it's been a fun ride. Really enjoyed it.
That is a really actually cool story. I think I've heard that a few different times, and it's always the same story, but I feel like each time you tell it from a slightly different perspective, and so that's like really fun. I guess this time one of the things I get out of this is like the Cadis cane. Is that still your favorite jig?
It's got a special place in my heart. What's funny is on the Black Friday sale, we ran out of that purple Cadis cane. I said, "Man, how can I run out of this jig? It is my favorite jig." So I painted some extra up just to make sure I got some of my tackle box this winter. So it's always a great jig. I know the tungsten's kind of taken over the market, but if you ever get in a really tough situation where the fish are absolutely finicky and you're ready to give up, that Cadis cane is, I'm not kidding. I think it's still probably the best jig we make. It's just a real narrow profile vertical jig, so it presents a lot smaller to the fish, and it's just a great, great jig on a finicky bite. I know there's still a lot of guys that order them. A lot of guys, obviously up on Mississippi River, that they've been using Cadis canes for 30, 40 years. It's still, a lot of their go-tos. That's for sure.
Okay, so I don't often do this, but I'm actually going to even pose this question to, the people at home, anybody that's watching, wherever you are watching, what is your favorite Widowmaker? Just
Yeah.
because I feel like so many people here know you and the jigs, and like the amazing thing about an expo, honestly, like I know I love your jigs and I love you guys, and so it's like a great reason to walk up to the table. But aside from that, somebody who has never been to an expo before, you are drawn to that table because of the way that you have it set up. Like there's lots of jig makers and they all have nice setups and it's all like really cool stuff, but yours looks like the way it feels walking into a candy shop. Like it's like it's like, ooh, like, and there's lots of great stuff out there. I'm not knocking anybody else, but I'm just saying when you walk up to your table, you just have to like pick through all the little boxes. And it's like because of that, people I think get really polarized of like what their favorites are or like what works best or like the color scheme makes the difference. And it's just cool to be able to look at all that.
Absolutely, yeah. We display them all bulk at the shows. We have the entire line there in the cases, so you can kind of. It's nice to go there, like you said, see them. A lot of people have shopped online for years, bought them at their local bait shops, but never seen the entire line. And I think that's one thing about us is we have such a unique tungsten line. We have, I believe, it's the biggest tungsten line in the United States. We have almost 400 tungsten SKUs just in the ice line. So I mean, it gives people a ton of variety, and there's so many people out there that are just hooked on like the teardrop profile, right? Because that's the original one that China was painting, right? So that's the first thing I did when we start custom painting them all. So I brought in all these unique profiles, right? And we continue to do that and make like throwbacks to some of the classic. Like we made a tungsten Cadis cane, right? We did a tungsten shrimp last year. So I mean that was a throwback to the straight vertical teardrop. I think all of us growing up as kids, everybody had vertical teardrops, right? It was the number one jig in the industry. So we really enjoy, being different, right? Making jigs that work and making different body styles that you're not going to find anywhere else. So I definitely think it's fun, and it's great. Like you said, I love going to the shows because we get, especially obviously here in the shop, we get so busy painting jigs, shipping orders as fast as we can, just kind of grinding that you kind of lose that sense of focus with your customer. And it's great to go there and build that connection again and talk to the guys. I mean, I see a lot of guys commenting in here that I get to see at the shows, and it's great to see them catch up, right? See how their year's been, see what their favorite jig is, and they might come up and say, "Hey, holy cow! Last year that tungsten shrimp was my number one. That was my go-to. I didn't take it off all year." And it's great to hear that. Obviously, that they love our jigs, but on the second end, it makes me feel good too, right? When I'm developing these prototypes and these color patterns, it's really rewarding. That's for sure. I think that's my favorite part. I mean, obviously we sell jigs there. That's great, but I love talking to the people and just getting that feedback. And I think people don't realize how important that feedback is, right? I mean, especially like you guys, right? You guys are always tinkering with something. You always have some great ideas. So like just going to the shows, getting to talk to people face to face and throwing ideas around there. I know right when you guys were in Sioux Falls, Friday night was slow and like we got to throw some ideas and like I come back to the shop. Obviously, I put all those ideas on paper and just continue to work and evolve with them. And I think that's probably the most fun part of my job. It's the part I love.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. So I have like a million questions that I want to ask. So I'm like channeling where to go right now. But I mean, I guess one of the things I'm really interested in is that process because I think like anglers, they go out on the water and then whether it exists or not, they get this thing in their head of like what those fish will eat. Like everybody has this idea in their mind. So like as far as, taking this idea from your brain and putting it all the way to the end of your line, right? What does it take to make all of that happen?
Yeah, and I think tungsten has made the whole process a little more difficult, right? When it was lead, we have vulcanizers, so we can create our own molds, right? Create our own patterns, our own bodies. It was super easy in the lead game. Obviously, tungsten has changed that. We throw it all in CAD and start drawing stuff up and making tweaks from there, then start making prototypes and reworking molds. But I think the biggest thing we do is try to produce jigs at work. I think a lot of people are so reluctant to use like our Lucky Lady, right? That jig's been around for 10 years now. And it's like we have people that are starting to finally use it and like they come back the next year and like, holy cow, that's my favorite jig. It's like, well, we've offered it for 10 years, right? Or like our Scud missile's another really popular one. And that's like this year too, right? We thought outside the box. We wanted to create something natural. That's why we did that tungsten fly. I mean, so if you haven't seen that, it's just a real bug-eyed, put a real little tail on the end of that. So again, something that's very lifelike. And we keep throwing back, and obviously we have something cool we're working on for next year. But we love throwing back, recreating those old classics. Right? They worked in lead for decades. I mean, some of these were Widowmaker's best sellers for 20 years. So it's nice to take that, and recreate that jig in the tungsten form, so that way the people get the benefits of tungsten in that tried and true form. Obviously a jig that's worked for a long, long time. So it's definitely a lot of fun. And what we do is we're constantly making tweaks. Like you said, we're listening to our customer feedback. Hey, I'd love to see this in tungsten. Or hey, what about this with a bigger hook for walleye or and stuff like that. Or hey, what about a jig that would show up better on my live scope? So we're constantly testing stuff, testing theories and different prototypes. But yeah, once we find a true winner, obviously that's our new jig, our new flagship jig for the following season.
Well, and so I guess like not to talk about the same thing twice, right? But I think what you're saying is so important because it's something that so often people don't know, right? So you were mentioning that you use the word of vulcanizer, right? That's a machine that helps you make those different lead molds. And so you were talking about, maybe it's not that easy and that's pretty specialized equipment, but like as far as those lead jigs, maybe that's why there's so much variation in, what people can buy on the market. Oh, our cat's like jumping right in front of the screen. I thought you couldn't see me, but you can probably see. But with that tungsten, that's not something that somebody just at home or even in like a shop can just like pour up, right? So tungsten has a very, very high melting point. I think a lot of times they do like the molding with powders. And I guess I don't even know if that's true, right? But what I do know is that tungsten is not just like an easy thing to just be like cranking out new molds. And so when you're talking about having, unique molds made and working with CAD, it's because those designs have to go out to the next chain, the next link in the chain of people who can make all of that happen. It's a lot of steps there.
Yeah, it is. Obviously, it's very very costly too. That's why I see a lot of companies don't, right? It's easy just to offer that traditional teardrop that everybody does, but the biggest thing there is it blows my mind, right? So if you were going bass fishing, you would never throw the same bait day in and day out, no matter the condition, no matter the depth, right? You would never just say, "Hey, I'm throwing this spinner bait," whether the water's 30 degrees, 60 degrees, if I'm fishing 2 foot or 10 foot, right? And the same with walleye fishing, all aspects, even open water fishing for say crappies or bluegills. But so many people are hooked on that teardrop profile, right? Because it's so readily available. They're like, "Oh, all I use is that teardrop." And I think there's definitely conditions where it works. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not a good jig, but I think there's a lot of circumstances where if you just try a different profile, you'll be blown away by the results, right? Say if you are on a finicky biter, say if you're crappie fishing or you're fishing for big bluegills that are highly pressured, just switching that little bit up can make all the difference in the world. I think they're doing themselves a disservice when they're like, "Oh, nope, it's all I need in teardrops." And I see it a lot like with orders, right? We'll have a guy comes and this is one of my favorite things to do, right? So a guy comes on the internet site and he orders 50 teardrops. And I'm thinking, what is this guy going to do when they don't want that presentation? So what I'll do is I'll grab a couple verticals, right? I'll write free samples on it and I'll throw it in his package just to force him to try it. And you wouldn't believe how many people come back and say, "Holy cow, that Cadis cane or that Lucky Lady or that scud you threw in it was incredible." And I think you need to diversify, right? Just because that's the easiest profile to get doesn't mean that's always going to be the answer out there. And I seen a question here. What's your best selling color pattern? And I think we can probably guess at this. What do you guys think, Josh and Emily? Best selling color pattern. What is it?
Okay, well, my answer, I don't know if it qualifies as an answer. I was going to say something in the metallic series, like that, the rainbow metallic.
Oh, come on, Emily. The biggest color pattern in the industry. What is it? Wonder Bread.
The Wonder Bread.
Wonder Bread. Wonder Breads are number one. However, I think that white with pink dots that we make outfishes it pretty regularly. Like we see a lot of customers that use that jig and come back for more and more time and time again. We see a lot of great fish photos on that jig. Another really good one is the pink crackerized. No matter if that's in the Scud, the Lucky Lady, or the Glow series, that pink crackerized is really, really popular. So that's a pink base and it has yellow lines throughout. It looks real natural when it glows because it gives it a irreversible effect, obviously, with the pink and the yellow, and it makes it look really buggy. But that's a good one as well. So.
Well, and actually, when you were reading that question, I was, wait, you're moving on too fast. Wait, because when you're talking about the color patterns, I think that's one of the cool things about Widowmaker. I was talking about walking up to the table and all of that. But the cool thing is, if you have a favorite color pattern, maybe it's the polka dot series, maybe it is the cracker eyes pattern, whatever that is, you can choose the different jigs by that color pattern. So that's a really fun way, I guess, to be able to diversify what you are fishing with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's crazy because then you can kind of say, hey, okay, I love that pink cracker eyes. That's a great jig in my area, right? Now you can try it. You can downsize your presentation, or you can go to a different, so say, hey, I'll switch over to the Scud or Lucky Lady. I'll give them a vertical profile, right? And that same color that works great on my lake. So you're changing that up, and that can make all the difference in the world some days. And the biggest thing with them verticals is they don't understand is on a finicky bite that presents a lot smaller to the fish. So I had an incredible experience. I was at Sioux Falls, happened to be out with one of the guys that used to fish for Team USA, right, in the Worlds or whatever, and he was fishing against Russia. And I said, hey, question for you. I said, when you're fishing these tournaments, right, and you're catching everything from little, 3-inch fish in Russia to, crappies, bluegills here, what kind of jigs are you guys using? Guess what came out of his mouth? Always vertical. Just blew my mind. Because guess what? That classic Cadis cane, a vertical jig, right? A lot of these jigs we're making, vertical jigs. So what that does is when it's in the water, it just presents a lot smaller to the fish. I don't know if I can show you on my camera here. So say if you're using a horizontal like this, right? You got this, and then you got say you got a wax worm sticking out. Well, that's giving the fish like 1.5 inch bait, right? Well, now you take this profile and you flip it vertical. All right, when that fish is rising on it, that's what he sees with that wax worm dangling out. So you can see why when he's rising on it, it presents a lot smaller to the fish. He comes up, it presents super natural. He comes up, he grabs it. Or say if it's even a really small, like one of our number 12 cadisons or some of our 14s and 16 verticals, it's just such a tiny little profile. You hook a single spike on, it looks like a single spike up there, just a little bit of color. They come up rising on it and they hit it versus that 1.5 inch profile they see when you're fishing horizontals.
Okay, your example came across on camera. Honestly, awesome. I
Oh,
appreciate
I
that.
didn't know how that was going to work. Yeah, that
No,
was
that
just
was
a jig
awesome.
I had in my hand. So yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I love, you referenced the lucky lady a little bit earlier, and that's why I love that jig, because that one might not be a perfectly vertical jig, but it does kind of sit mostly vertical. But what I really like to do is get, maybe an inch minnow plastic, and then I'll like nose hook that minnow. And I know that's maybe a little bit unconventional, but then what it looks like is a little minnow like picking at a
Absolutely.
bug. And so sometimes you can get, that finicky bite. You can really trick the fish, or, if they're really territorial or they're really, moving around. I just have found that to be a very versatile bait.
Yeah, and the thing is, guys, when you're out there and you're fishing a finicky bite, don't be afraid to switch colors too. Like the smallest color change can make all the difference in the world. We get people that come up, especially at the shows, and say, "Color don't matter." Eh, I'm afraid it does, right? Like it is a
Right.
huge difference. Good example is just 2 weeks ago, my dad and brother were out fishing on Mississippi, right? They're out crappie fishing. Dad was fishing. This is how crazy it is, right? My brother was fishing a yellow with orange polka dots. My dad was fishing the reverse jig, orange with yellow dots, right? My brother was catching all the crappies, could not catch a perch. My dad, with that orange, was catching all the perch. So my dad ended up with like 11 perch on the day, one crappie, whereas my brother had all the crappies and never did catch a perch. So I mean, just that little bit of difference, right? Exact same color patterns, just reverse standard, right? One's orange base, yellow dots, one's yellow base, orange dots, and crappies wanted one, perch wanted the other. I mean, that's how little of a difference. It's almost laughable at times, like how much of a difference can make. Or say you're using an orange polka dot, orange chartreuse dots or pink chartreuse dots. How much of a difference? I mean, we'll see it out fishing. It's like, wow, they want the pink today or they want the orange. I mean, it's just really little changes sometimes can make all the difference in the world.
So what I'm hearing is that the key is walking up to that expo table and just taking two of every jig that you offer.
One thing there is like you get to see them all. So it's great to come up and just look at them all, right? Take some time, take it all in, and maybe grab one or two of these. Maybe it's a great opportunity to try some new stuff, right? Because you can, grab a couple of this body style, a couple of that body style. We obviously run some good bulk deals to allow you to, pick up some of your favorites too. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to see them. I know some guys that are commenting on here. We see them every year. We love talking to them. Obviously, they come up and we're always talking about the new stuff and what worked last year. So yeah, Jay, the ice fly, absolutely. He got to see that out at the Sioux Falls show. Oh, Carla, how you doing? Carla's a great customer up on the Mississippi River. Absolutely, guys. But which plastic works best? Getting into plastics, don't know where to start. You guys can chime in too. I think with something like this, I love two different plastic profiles. Usually like a minnow profile, like Emily was talking about, right? Get like your natural fry profile, maybe like a 1-inch minnow pattern. Obviously use that for your crappies and your perch, but then you also have to have the classic like bug profile. I know there's a lot of great ones out there. Something buggy. I wish I had one. I don't have one directly in front of me here. Like Panfish Plastics makes the chigger fry. We do have some new ones that we're offering, but any little bug profile in that sub 1-inch category is a great style. If you're on finicky bluegills, I think smaller the better for plastic. I mean, and big gills can get super finicky in the winter. I mean, we got some really small, like little swimmers, we call them, just a tiny bit of plastic with just a little real finesse tail on it. I mean, something like that is all that works. Absolutely. And like Carla says, polka dot is the bomb. She is king of that polka dot in the summer on the Mississippi River. That's for sure. But no, any questions, guys? That's great. I love reading those. Yeah, sometimes a solid color is better as well. Absolutely. Great point there, James, right? There's situations where, yeah, that solid pink will outfish the polka dot, right? And it's hard for the on the business end of it, right? Because everybody wants these crazy colors to catch fishermen. But at the end of the day, like you said, I mean, it could be I know there was last year some people on finicky bites, and I was getting a lot of requests to custom paint just a straight black jig. No eyes, no dots, no nothing, just black, right? That's what they wanted. And that's why we still offer I still paint up just a single color line, right? I offer all 12 color patterns, just single color, white, black eye, just super basic for those times when that's all they want, right? Absolutely. Love your pink Wonder Bread for crappie. Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. Any questions? Throw them out there. Josh and Emily, same with you guys. You guys
Okay, so there was a question a little bit farther up, and I thought it was a good one.
Yeah.
How do you name all of your different products? Like, that's a lot of names to come up with.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're definitely right. So the first time we launched tungsten, it was a pretty memorable experience. Me and one of my best friends sat there, and I had the catalog was going to print the next day. And I said, dude, we need these names tonight. Like before we go to bed tonight, I'm sorry you're here. I'm sorry you're getting stuck with this duty with me. So it was kind of fun. Obviously, we had some beverages throughout, tons of names. That was in the early days. Now we use a lot more, I'd say, scientific approach, right? Something that they represent, right? Like last year was a throwback to our shrimp. So obviously it was an easy one to shrimp. I mean, this one here, if you think it looks like anything, obviously it looks like a big old bug-eyed horsefly, right? So tungsten fly. I know it's kind of a basic generic name. We got a new one in the works for next year, but like our dragonfly, same thing, right? Just a real long horizontal presentation, just like a dragonfly. That was our new polka dot one this year. So we've offered this dragonfly for years, and it was kind of a silent jig that did really well in pockets, right? We'd see people order them like crazy. Some shops couldn't keep them in stock, whereas other areas are like, I don't like that dragonfly. It definitely depends on your area, but this can be an incredible jig. And we said, okay, we need to give this jig a little more love than we have. So that's why we did it in the Polka Dot Glow series this year, just to kind of give that jig a little more respect. Some people do love that. And I know like in Wisconsin, Minnesota, I mean, they do well on this. So it has that big weight forward head. And what's nice is I run a lawn shank hook on that. So you got a good hook on that for your plastics. We do that in two sizes, a 12 and a 10. So whether you're fishing plastics, a lot of guys love the bigger one. They'll hook a crawler on it, open water. They'll go out in their kayaks and just drift with that down. And it swims so true with that big weight forward head. And they do very, very well. I mean, catching everything on it from bluegills to bass to, I mean, we'll see pictures of walleyes, crappies, you name it. It kind of catches everything with the crawler dangling off the back. That's for sure.
That's one of my favorites. I really like that one. And I like the big gold ones are really nice for dead sticks in the wintertime. You can put a minnow on it. Like you said, it sits horizontal but kind of little forward. And so if you set that minnow down there like face hooked down by the bottom, it goes around and it's shiny, and so it looks like a couple minnows down on the bottom, and it's really good for walleyes. And I really like it as in the smallest size and the medium size for crappies, especially when I'm fishing with like the stinger style baits. I carry that all over from summer. I'll throw down a 2.5 inch or a 3 inch plastic sometimes with that on the front of it, depending on how aggressive they are. But like you said earlier, with plastics, if you're looking for somewhere to start, if you're brand new and you're like your hand is shaking because you don't want to let go of your bait cup and you're like, I don't know if I can do this plastic thing, start with white. And like Brian said, grab something that's a 1 inch bug. Doesn't matter. I would suggest finding something like the Spider Monkey from IGO Plastics, something that just is a grub body with a couple legs off of it that you can simulate a whole bunch of different ones. You can hook it so it sits vertically. You can hook it thread it so it sits horizontally. Get that in white, and that's a really good transition bait from your waxworms over to plastics. And once you get your confidence in that, then try different colors. Then, like Brian said, when you get really confident, start finding those minnows. And like I said, don't be afraid to go up to sometimes 3 inches in some of those crappie baits, because you never know.
In open water?
No.
You're putting 3 inch crappie baits in winter?
You've seen all 4 of my duffel bags full of plastics. No, but seriously, like when you start getting that confidence built up, that's when you start, building your repertoire. Brian hit the nail on the head a couple times. You just figure out what's working in your body of water, match your colors, and contrast your colors with your jigs and your plastics. So you don't necessarily have to have the jig color match your plastic color. A lot of times having that contrast is in your benefit too. So those are all great things to get into that plastics game, and having the tungsten jigs and stuff, and the vertical lead jigs and stuff to help you along the way.
Absolutely. And I think you brought up a good point there, Josh, is confidence, right? Once you get that plastic and you get confidence on how to fish that plastic right, whether it be a real little quiver, an aggressive shake on a more of a minnow pattern or something like that, once you get confidence in that bait, it's easy to fish. I think a lot of guys are new to plastic. They're kind of scared. What I'd recommend is, like somebody said, BY Baits. They make some great baits. I know he does a really good job with some lifelike buggy looking baits, right? just grab a little bit of a variety and obviously test them out, right? Test out different colors. Like somebody else said, a lot of times it is your more natural patterns at work, whether, and it's funny because like we had some clear glow ones we were selling. We don't make any plastics, by the way. We do offer several brands on our site as a convenience to our customers. So I definitely don't have any like biased opinion there by any means. But yeah, like we offered some glow ones that were just a clear bait, but a lot of stuff these fish eat, they're foraging on are really small organisms that are clear as well. So like, oh, why would I use a clear plastic? And then you go out and use it, you're like, wow, well, that worked, right? You're just kind of matching the hatch, and it's obviously it works great.
I really like this question. What lure are you using for rattle reel?
Ooh, I would say a big vertical, right? I would say like a size 6, size 4 Cadis cane or traditional lead jigs or a freshwater shrimp, right? Something with a little bit of color on the body, a big hook, obviously hook that minnow on to dead stick it at night and good to go. Just enough to give you a little bit of color without you don't want to get your profile too big, right? Because always that fish sucks it in. He feels that weight of resistance. And I think that's where we've done a lot too, not to go off topic, but like when we did the droplet, that was the whole concept there. I could grab one for you and show you, but the droplet, what we did is we took like that 5 mil tungsten and narrowed it down because we put some of that weight throughout the shanks. That way you slide your plastic right up over that little collar. And it's a great bait for fish and plastic because that fish comes up, he hits it, he feels that soft plastic. He tastes that soft plastic. He don't hit that big tungsten jig head. And I think we talked at the hit this topic a little bit if we're going to go there is when you have fish in an aquarium, right? It's always incredible to see that fish. And I think any of us that have seen fish feed on, say if you put wax worms or pieces of crawler in an aquarium and that fish goes down that bluegill or whatever it is and he hits them small pebbles in that aquarium, he sucks up that night crawler every time, but he always sucks up rocks. He instantly spits out the rocks, but always keeps that night crawler in his mouth. He never once spits that night crawler. It's incredible how they do it, how
Yeah.
fast they spit them rocks out, and how they never lose that crawler. I don't know how the mouth exactly works on a fish to do that, but it is incredible. So that's why when we're developing these profiles, we don't want to get these crazy big, flat, big, huge tungsten profiles because that fish comes up. He's not stupid, right? I mean, he'll come up, he'll hit that, he'll right away. He feels that dense profile. He's gone, right? And that's why when you're fishing, sometimes you'll get if you're using a big jig on a finicky bite, you'll get one little bump, and then he's gone, right? You'll watch him on your live scope or your Vexilar slowly swim away, right? Whereas obviously the smaller the profile, the better results on a finicky bite.
Well, that's a really great point because sometimes people are so convinced like it has to do with like did the fish get the hook? Did they get stung or not? But I think so often there's other factors that the fish is considering. And so one of them, like you're saying, is honestly the weight or the density of that
Yeah.
jig, like when they bite down. I do also hate to bring this up, but like even sometimes like fish love glow, but sometimes they hate glow. And so sometimes,
Absolutely.
figuring out all those little nuance things is what adds up to getting that bite.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's the same concept when you go out, say, crappie fishing, right? And you're using like the smallest bobbers you can to get the job done, right? If you go out there and you throw on a great big bobber for crappies, right? I'm saying like a 3 inch round bobber and you cast it out, he comes up, he bumps that a few times, he feels that resistance, he's gone. Or say if you're trying to walleye fish with a great big bobber, say if you're slip bobber and walleye, same concept. Same thing ice fishing, right? So you want to downsize your profile. So if you are using something on a rattle reel or something like that, you want that fish to grab it and take it. Obviously, you could be laying in bed sleeping, right? You want to give yourself time that he sucks in that minnow. He doesn't feel that real narrow cadis king. He swims off with it. And I think this is a good little time for a story quick. This is years ago before I even owned the business, right? My buddy was starting to switch over to tungsten and I was just out fishing him like crazy on the cadis king. We were on a lake. We were catching big bluegills and they were super finicky. And he says, hey, why aren't you setting the hook? We were using spring bobber rods, and he'd see my spring go. And I wouldn't set the hook, and all of a sudden that fish would grab it. Bam, I drill him. He's like, why are you waiting so long? I said, just watch. I said, he doesn't feel that profile. And this is, like I said, before I even owned the business. He'd come up to that spring. He'd hit it once, hit it twice. Third time that big gill, he thought he was safe. He'd just grab it and take that spring down slowly. Pow, every time I was drilling him, right? I got probably 15 fish in my bucket, and this guy's this new tungsten was hitting the market, right? He was all excited about it, and he wouldn't switch. I had him down about 15-1. I said, here, try one of these purple cadis kings. He did, and obviously we had a great day. And the same thing, we were fishing 10 to 11-inch bluegills in South Dakota a few years ago, right? And I was out there with a big group of buddies, and we were catching giant gills, but they were some of the most finicky gills I've ever seen. We downsized. I have a size 12 ice slice, which is just a speck of lead on a little hook, on a little sprout hook, right? Little gold sprout hook. It's just a speck. I had some black and purple ones, and that's what they wanted. I mean, we were hooking a single spike on it, but they'd come up, you hold it still, they'd suck it in. They'd bump it a couple times, they'd suck it in, set the hook. We were catching giant gill after giant gill, but again, on a super small presentation. And I think like people are like, oh, I'm done with lead. And like, I understand it, right? For 95% of the bites, yeah, you're fine for tungsten. But I think you're doing yourself a disfavor if you don't have just a couple emergency lead jigs in your box for that situation. If you're on a trip or something, say if you're out in the Dakotas fishing jumbo perch, or you're on a really tough bite on the Mississippi River after a cold front, something like that, where you can drop that Old Faithful down there and get the job done for you.
Well, and I can agree with, there's a lot of people in the comments talking about, tungsten is the best, and I think to some extent there's a lot of times where that might be true. But I do have to say, as far as brush fishing, for one, I really like a jig that's going to fall a little bit slower. But the other thing is, when you think of even just fish that are in schools, and they're all like a big mass of fish. I know this is a really big demonstration, right? But if you have a jig that's falling really fast and it's until the middle or the bottom that the fish like grab it, and you're ripping those fish out of the middle of the school, you might be, breaking up that school, and they might dissipate faster. If instead you have that school and you're dropping down slower, and then those ones at the top, you grab them, and then the next ones, and then, you kind of fish in layers. And I think you can oftentimes like extend that bite and not scare fish out as much. So, like you're saying, I love tungsten, but I think that there's a time and a place for kind of all the different tools.
Well, and I'd like to piggyback on that too. I think a lot of times we get so set on this fishing 6 inches to a foot off the bottom, and just speaking generally to panfish here, lead, I know it helps me, but lead helps not rip through the top half of that water column so fast, because a lot of times some of the biggest fish you'll catch are within 2, 3, even 1 foot of the ice, and you'll never see them on a Vexar. You might see them on forward facing sonar, but they're moving, but those fish can see that stuff up against the ice, and that's why they're up there, is because there's stuff floating around up there, and they can see that contrast with the light behind it. And if you drop down too fast and you get past the light line, then you're fishing the fish that aren't super active. And so I think lead, just like Emily said, you're picking off top fish if you're fishing the suspended schools, but also don't forget about a lot of times the bigger guys are just like swimming around by themselves, or maybe in 2s or 3s, just cruising around the top of the ice looking for stuff. So
yeah. And one thing to touch on that lead is it is significant lighter than tungsten, right? Especially some of them smaller profiles like that Cadis cane I was talking about. A little trick there is when you're fishing that in deeper water, definitely put a small split shot. Get the smallest one you can find. Typically, it's like BB, and put it a ways away. Put it like 1.5 foot to 2 foot above that jig. The problem is if you put it close, right, and you're down there and you're jigging, looks like a little bug down in the water. You'll see so many fish, especially on your forward-facing sonar. You'll see them rise right past your jig up to that split shot and peck, peck, peck. So definitely get it away from that jig so it doesn't get their attention. Drop that lead jig down if you're on a really tough bite. And again, I'm not bashing tungsten by any means. Tungsten is probably higher than 95%, probably 96, 97. But if you get on a tough bite, there's definitely times where that lead definitely has its advantages. I mean, another story that comes to mind is a couple years ago, we were fishing pressured crappies locally here in Iowa. And my brother and I were out on the lake, and I'm dropping the tungsten 5 mil down with plastic and just drilling crappies. And it was starting to slow down. My brother, he's like, oh, I'm going with Old Faithful. Drops a purple Cadis king down with a split shot, and it's just taking forever, obviously, on the Vexlar, slowly dropping down. Gets down there before it even gets to the brush pile, right? We've been fishing this brush pile for 2 hours. You see this mark just flying up to it, boom, hits it, sets the hook, pulls up the biggest crappie of the day. And I was like, okay, like what the heck, right? He drops it down again, second fish, second biggest crappie of the day. So, I mean, those crappies were in that brush pile all morning, right? Like Josh said earlier, they were down in the brush. They were a little more dormant that day, but that slow fall, that lead They were coming right out of there, streaking out of there, and most of them even up bite it, right? They see it falling so slow, they'll come up, they'll hit it, up bite it, set the hook, and there they are.
Mhm.
So, and so, but the key is definitely put that small split shot above. If you go out in 20 foot of water and you try throwing a number 10 Cadis cane down, and I think that's my favorite size too, is just throw it out there. I like the number 10 Cadis cane. Unless you're fishing crappies specifically, then I bump up to the 8. But otherwise, that 10 is a great jig. We use the same mold on both, so the bodies are going to be the same weight, but that little smaller little 10 is a little better when you're fishing crappies and gills. But again, if you go to 20 foot of water and you try dropping that jig down, you're going to be like, Brian's an idiot. You're going to cut that thing off and never use a Cadis cane again. So the key is definitely get that split shot a foot and a half, 2 foot above it to help you out. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to be in a world of hurt. It's going to be blowing around down there. So absolutely, it can be a good one though. And like I said, I think I got a soft spot in my heart for that purple Cadis cane. I always have a couple with me just in case. Absolutely.
That's so funny. There was farther up, we were talking about plastics, and Jay made a comment, pick 4 colors of plastics. Honestly, there's like so many things to talk about. We can't talk about them all. But in my mind, I read that and I've been thinking ever since, what would my 4 colors be? But I do know that purple would be one of them. And so you keep referencing, the purple Cadis cane, but I don't know how fish see purple, what that color looks like to them, or if purple is more natural than I expected. I don't even know what the deal is, but I just, especially ice season, that is one of the colors that is my go-to also.
Yeah, and it seems like purple's better in lakes, right? I think a lot of our fishermen, if they're fishing rivers, purple typically, like I even know myself growing up on the Mississippi River, right? It was always your chartreuses, your oranges, your pinks, right? Whereas come down here to these lakes where I'm at now, it's more your natural profiles, your blacks, your purples, stuff like that is really good. And I think it kind of, throughout the country, if you're fishing more, obviously stained or dirty water, yeah, you're going to want some of your brighter colors. But if you're in that clean water, that purple and black are hard to beat, that's for sure. And I talk to people every day, obviously, when they're calling up to order jigs or online. And, obviously some of them love, hey, I never use purple in my area. Purple's terrible. I can never catch a fish on it. And then your next guy, he's like, holy cow, I see his order and he's got 50 purples. And it's like, okay. So, I mean, a lot of it is based on where you're at. And I think as far as plastics colors, from what I see on our end, as far as selling several different ones, is like that natural motor oil color is always really popular. Red's popular. White is always seems to be a good one. Like Emily said, some of your like darker purples, and like the people making plastics these days, like bless their hearts, they are incredible. Like there is so many great profiles now and great colors with a little bit of fleck in there. I mean, it is incredible to see all the different creations that they're coming up with. I mean, it reminds me of a kid, remember them creepy crawler sets, right? Where you're making all these, you and your brother sitting down squirt. Yeah, yeah. I knew you played with them, Josh. Absolutely. That's where the passion probably came from. But yeah, squirting different colors in there, right? Creating all these different baits. But I think when they're in them shops and they're getting creative, I mean, it's pretty incredible. Some of these creations are coming up with the 2-tone patterns and like I said, with all that fleck in them, and they look really, really good. That's for sure. They're making them lifelike.
Well, and I think that you bring up a good point. Just like you guys all love Brian and Widowmaker lures, all the whole family thing that goes into that. There is, for every Brian of the world, there's like 5 different plastics manufacturers sitting in their basement doing awesome work, and they might not all work for you because there's so many variations. I don't know, some of you may not know, but Emily and I pour plastics as a hobby, just part of our learning experience, trying to help Brian and some of the other people out in the industry just with thoughts and stuff. But there's so many variations between plastic densities and different colors and different shapes and stuff, and it's worth going on Facebook and just searching like selling like plastics, because there's a bunch of groups and you can find some really cool people out there making some really cool stuff. You'll start to learn the different names of the molds that you see from different companies. You can find the same profile throughout different companies. They might have different colors or they might have different actions just because of the plastic density. So I really implore you to check them out, because supporting those small businesses is what keeps innovation going. Like Brian said, they're so creative and they do some really cool stuff. So I am a huge proponent of hand pours. Nothing against big box stores. You can get the job done with that, but I just think there's something about low temp poured plastic that that's a little bit softer but still durable. It just works so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of great options. Like I said, we offer several on the website. We are actually looking into adding a couple more as well. We just added one. I'm talking actually in the works with a guy right now to add another small manufacturer. Like you said, Josh, we're trying to support the small guys too. Obviously, that's where we come from, a small business. So it's kind of cool to work together. A lot of them are starting to sell our jigs on their site. Just kind of work together and obviously wade through the industry, right?
Yeah.
And another big thing is scented plastics, right? Now everybody, not only are they shooting them different density plastics can make a huge difference, like you said, different colors and flakes. Well, then this guy scents his this way, this guy scents his that way, and that can make a huge difference as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of variables for you out there, that's for sure. Yeah.
So there's a question like way far back.
Yeah.
To be honest, it says, "What's your number one selling jig?" I couldn't let this show go by without asking that.
Number one selling jig. As far as profile. I don't know, as far as the numbers, what does the computer say? Yeah.
Jig.
Number one top jig. Number one without a doubt is a 5 mil Wonder Bread, 5 mil Glow Series polka dot, Wonder Bread. Like we sell more of those than anything else. Then obviously number two is 4 mil Wonder Bread. But outside of that, I mean, some of our best sellers, like I said, that Lucky Lady is sneaky. It's been around forever, but it continues to pick up steam. The shrimp last year, a lot of guys are shrimp lovers. Like we're seeing, and it's always kind of cool, right? Because like you see the order when a guy's trying things, right? He'll order 10, 12, 15 different jigs, right? One or two of each, right? And then you get the guys like we just ran our Black Friday sale last week, comes on, and we have some guys ordering 50 or 60 of one specific jig in their favorite color, right? It might be, I had a guy, he ordered like 53 mil purple with pink dots, and he ordered 54 mil purple with pink dots. So it's like, okay, this guy has it dialed in on his lake, right? Purple, pink is his color. These two jigs, right? It's cool to see that, obviously. And like I said, that white and pink one is another one that's really good. That white base with pink polka dots is another one we see people heavy hitting on the website all the time. The yellow's good, but like I said, that Lucky Lady, Scud, the Cadis cane, again, it's been around for a while, but we get people that definitely, that tungsten Cadis cane has a strong niche following too. The guys that order it, they'll order a lot of them when they're doing it. So they're clearly catching fish on them. But it's fun to see, and obviously different markets, right? Different areas. And I think that's the biggest thing is just because we release a jig doesn't necessarily mean it might be for your area, right? I think this was big. A couple years ago, we came out with the Slab Seeker spoon, right? Great spoon. 16th ounce or 3/32 ounce. And I had a bunch of buddies that never fished a spoon in their life, right? They fish highly pressured fish, right? Tiny 3 and 4 mils. I released this spoon. They said, "Brian, what the hell? I can't catch any fish on the spoon." It's like, that spoon wasn't intended for you guys. Like, I was like, "Hey, do you ever fish jigging spoons for crappies or perch?" And they're like, "Well, no." I was like, "Well, what makes you think this is going to be any different, right? Just because I released it doesn't mean it's for your area. Is it worth trying? Absolutely. But everything is different. Like I touched on the dragonfly earlier, right? It matters on what they're feeding on. If they're feeding on bigger profile baits or smaller profile baits. And I think we've seen a lot of that with another huge market is the whitefish, right? Up on Green Bay, right? So they started off using tiny little jigs. Well, now the fish are feeding on bigger baits, right? So now they're using huge, like 6 mils with 2-3 inch plastic for these whitefish up there because they're feeding on gobies, right? I think it's just all a matter of what your fish are foraging on. I mean, if they're eating bloodworms out of the in the spring, if the perch are feeding on bloodworms on the mud flats, obviously a real small profile jig that kind of matches the hatch is what you're going to have the best luck with. So again, it's not like we put a ton of research and effort into our jigs. Like even this new one was kind of fun. We were fishing it last year, testing prototypes, and my brother happened to be down, and he's a big meat fisherman. He's always got live bait on. It's very rare for Tim to use plastics through the ice. Not to throw Tim under the bus here, right? Kind of. So Tim comes down.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, I think he's on here too, so this would be good. So Tim comes down and we're fishing local lake, and I said, "Hey, I got this new jig I want you to try out." He's like, "What?" So I tie one on for him. I got one on. Another buddy's got one on, and we're fishing it with no bait. It's the tungsten fly, right? The size 12 tungsten fly. Tim's like, "Well, give me some spikes." I said, "No, you're fishing it just like it is." Don't be stupid. Give me some spikes. I said, just drop. There he is. There's Tim. So we drop it down. I said, wait, and Tim's down there and he's not getting them. And we're pulling up bluegill after bluegill. He's like, what are you guys doing? I was like, Tim, just keep it moving, right? You got to simulate a small bug, right? Just a real little quiver action. Just keep that fly moving. You'll catch him without bait. All of a sudden, boom, he catches his first one. His eyes light up. Holy cow. Wow, this is great. No bait. I said, do it again, right? So drops it down, starts catching him again, right? And it's just, again, confidence. The guy, he was so determined that he needed me to give him some spikes. I had spikes in my pocket, but I definitely wasn't giving them to him until he tried it like we intended it to be, right? And that jig's great tip with bait, don't get me wrong, but when we were testing prototypes, I wanted to test that efficiency, right? See if you could catch him without bait, and obviously we did. We had a great time, but it was good for him to get out of his comfort zone and catch a few like that. That's for sure.
That's super awesome, and you never know what you're going to catch, especially with that type of presentation. Because I have a few. I dabble in a little tying. I'm not stellar at it, but I do okay. And we were catching some perch off of this crib earlier this fall, and Emily was catching some perch, and then she switched over to one of your prop jigs. And so she started catching some bluegills, and I was like, well, there's bluegills down there. So I put on this little tungsten fly thing that I tied up, and I started pounding, and I was catching walleyes, and they were eating this tiny little bug thing. Just kind of like, if I would have had a fly, I bet it would have been the same thing. Like, and so you never know, like you said, if that's what they're eating, then that's what what you're gonna catch. So that's cool that you can use those lures that you make with and without bait, even if it's unintentional sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're in a tough situation, I was up in Canada one time. Another short story. We were walleye fishing up in Winnipeg. This is 10, 12 years ago. And we heard about this perch bite just north of us. Well, we didn't have any wax worms, didn't have any spikes. So we go up there with these little ice jigs, and we had very limited plastic. So we had to try getting these jumbo perch. We're catching 14, 15-inch perch on like whatever we can find, right? I remember making little bread balls and hooking them on the hook. I mean, because we literally had nothing, right? And it wasn't like we were going to drive to the nearest store and grab some spikes or wax worms. Like, no, we were out in my buddy's snowbird, just letting it rip on whatever we could find in that snowbird. And it was fun. It was kind of fun. You could see them all. Did we catch them all? Absolutely not, right? But did we catch some trophies and have a blast doing it? Yeah, we were getting innovative and taking jigs. I mean, we were really getting desperate out there, but it was a lot of fun catching them on, going way outside the comfort zone there and catching some fish. But absolutely.
Oh my goodness. So I feel like our conversation is just beginning, but we've already been here talking almost an hour, and I promise I won't take up your whole night. But seeing as we are at the end of the show, is there anything that we missed talking about that you're dying to get in before we end?
I'll just touch real quick on some new products. I kind of showed you guys the fly. Obviously, that's one of the new ones. It's been real popular. 3 sizes of that. I think one of the biggest things some people are definitely taking advantage of it is our new jig box, right? So we took that compression foam out of our suitcase. We put it in a pocket-sized box this year. I truly think this is the best box in the industry. What's nice about that, it has the compression foam in the lid. So when it closes up, it doesn't matter how much it gets banged around. You can take this thing, whether you UTV, ATV, sled, whatever, it's in the bottom of your shack and banged around. Nothing's going to go anywhere. I mean, you can see I open it back up. Nothing moves. And what's nice there is now it's double-sided, waterproof, and it floats, right? So guys know how magnetic ice holes are to your goods, right? Doesn't matter if it's a cell phone, what it is, drops down, going right down the hole. So if this does hit the ice, we've heard a lot of sad stories through the years, guys losing their ice box, jig boxes down the hole. So it is nice that it floats. Obviously, if you use it in the summer in a kayak, a canoe, a boat, even something happens off a dock and you kick it off, no worries, it floats. So with all that foam in there, it floats like crazy. We tested this with hundreds of 5 mils, couldn't get it to go under. So I have confidence this and our suitcase, you're not going to sink either one of them. But it's nice that we have that technology now in a pocket-sized box. So this has been very, very popular. If you haven't grabbed it yet, I definitely would recommend. I don't know if we're going to have them all year. They've been selling very, very well. So that's something I think would, for the average fisherman, maybe, hey, what about a stocking stuffer, right? It's $12.99, so it's a great little gift to get somebody, and it's absolutely going to upgrade their collection of jigs. That's for sure.
Nice.
And I'm betting at one of these ice shows we can do a little side video and show you some close-ups and whatever of all that. Because those are really nice boxes. So that's really going to be great for people.
Absolutely. Well, again, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm looking forward to the show, and hopefully see a lot of you guys over here in the comments. I know I recognize a lot of the names. We'll see you probably this weekend, and definitely make sure you stop by the booth and say hi.
Okay,
Well,
wait,
and
but don't wrap up too quick.
Well, and I'm gonna say one more thing. If you guys didn't get to see Brian at Sioux Falls or Blaine, they have a bunch of new apparel out too. They have a blue version of this. They got some sweet new hoodies. They got a few different hats. So we're like super stoked on that because they've always come out with like one or two really cool looking pieces throughout the years, but this year they came out with a bunch and it's awesome. I gotta load my closet up.
Yeah, I definitely went overboard with the apparel, and we do got some. I'll let you guys in on a secret. We got some really cool leather patch hats coming for Oshkosh. We're gonna have them just in time. We're gonna debut them at the show. Several colors, several different color patterns with the leather patch. So that'll be brand new in Oshkosh. First time anybody gets to see them. And we try selling our apparel very reasonable, like the UPF shirt Josh has on, $29.99. So we try. Yeah. And like even this stuff, we just sell it just slightly above cost. We want you guys out there representing the brand. We appreciate that. So we're not trying to gouge you guys and make a bunch of money off apparel, right? We're just happy you guys use our lures. And if you want to wear our apparel, that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
So, absolutely.
Jan is asking, is there a Madison Ice Show this year? And I'm going to answer that in a really funny way because there is a Wisconsin Fishing Expo in February, and that is in Madison. But the Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo is what we're talking about. That's going to be in Oshkosh. So for those people who are saying that they're joining us in Oshkosh, that is what we're talking about. That is December 8th through 10th. The information is here. Otherwise, icefishexpo.com. And that is where that debut of those hats and all of your other awesome jigs and carrying cases and all of that stuff will be. And I guess the other thing that I was going to say is that we are doing a giveaway. These podcasts leading up to Wisconsin Ice Fishing Expo, we are honestly giving away some of our favorite products. Sometimes we've been doing this in the form of, we have like a Lakewood Products money bag and I reach in and I pull out something awesome. But to be honest, I think we have a little prize pack that we're going to pull together. And I think Brian offered up a few jigs. So I don't know what those are yet, but maybe one or two of the styles that we talked about tonight. And so remind us, how do we get entered into winning this prize pack?
So if you guys are joining us through our YouTube channel, or if you're joining us through the Ice Fishing Expo page, hop over to the Crappie Junction page. Just leave a comment in the same video. Unfortunately, I can only do comment picker on one of the posts. So we decided to do the one on the Crappie Junction page. So go over there, just put a comment in. A bunch of you have been commenting the whole show, so you're already entered. But if you haven't threw a comment in yet, then go do that. I'm going to keep that open for an hour, so I'll do a pick in 9, and I will take a screenshot and tell you who won.
And that's going to be really fun for anybody who is able to join us live or just right after, I suppose. And for those of you who can't join us live, that is no problem at all, because you can find this either on YouTube, on Facebook, playbacks in the live section, or even on some of your favorite podcasts. Wherever you have your favorite podcast, just search for Crappie Junction and the Night Bite, and all this will come up. And then you can listen to us while you're driving to the expos this weekend and next weekend.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, because otherwise we'll stay here all night. Brian, thank you so much for spending this much time.
Thank you, guys. My pleasure. No, I always appreciate it, guys. Thanks a ton.
And to the people at home, thank you guys as well, because you guys are always a big part of the fun. And if you think of more questions or comments or things along the way, leave that in the comment box and we'll get back to you. If we don't see you here, then hopefully we'll see you at the expos or next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.